All right, it's time. Let's run our midseason evaluation of the 49ers defense. Just to give you a sneak preview, got a lot of good stuff in this show. Defensive line, secondary slash linebackers, the back seven. Look at the 49ers run and pass defense, all visualized here. I'm going to go through it. So, everybody, like and subscribe, and make sure that you do check out the link in the description. It's where I'm bringing all this from. This is my article, the 49ers midseason evaluation, where Chase Young can boost a languishing defense. We start here. This is the common thread for the 49ers because I know that evaluating this defense and understanding where it's at can be a little tricky given the fact that they were so good in weeks 1 through 5, on the surface at least, and they've been so poor in weeks 6 to 8. So, how do we make sense of it? Well, we take some splits right here and we see if there's been a commonality. The top is the 49ers defense in weeks 1 through 5, XY axis. Pass defense is going to be found on the x-axis. So the further your logo is to the right, the better your pass defense has been. The run defense is found on the y-axis. So the further up your logo is, the better your pass defense has been. So you want to be up and to the right, kind of like the Cleveland Browns, who we've talked about as the top defense in football, or started as the top defense in football. The Browns, though, have since regressed to the mean, as you'll see down at the bottom. Anyway, weeks 1 through 5, the Browns are really good, and the 49ers found their dot here far to the right. Good pass defense, maybe the third best pass defense in the league behind Cleveland and Baltimore. But the dotted red line, the X here, that's the graph. The 49ers found themselves below average on run defense. So even when the 49ers were undefeated and playing well in general on defense, they had a below average run defense. Then you look here at the bottom, week 6 to 8. The 49ers dot is found down here, bottom left. That's where you don't want to be. The 49ers had a below average pass defense and a below average run defense in week 6 to 8 during their 3-game losing streak. So the one commonality between the good and the bad is that the 49ers have had a below average run defense the entire time. And run defense is the basis for everything. If you can't stop the run, you're not going to have any fun. I know I've said that a million times here over the last couple of weeks, but it is true. The 49ers have taken advantage of this in the other direction with Kyle Shanahan's offense, and now they're being taken advantage of with their own defense that can't stop the run. I think the league is reemphasizing the run game, maybe copying the 49ers offense. Whatever the impetus has been, the 49ers need to stop it. Because you can't stop the run. If you can't stop the screen game, you're not going to force pour down and distance for opposing offenses, and you're not going to force pass rush happy situations for your own defense. And the 49ers defense is built around the pass rush. They now have Chase Young on top of Nick Bosa, on top of Javon Hargrave, on top of Eric Armstead, on top of Randy Gregory. I mean, you've got a lot of good pass rushers on this 49ers defense, but you have to give them a chance to rush the passer. And they have to give themselves the chance to rush the passer by earning that right, which comes through stopping the run. So run defense is the basis of everything, and it is also the basis of the 49ers problems. You see their dot down here, and even in weeks 1 through 5, run defense wasn't good. For weeks, 10 through 18, the 49ers would love to find themselves up in this upper right corner. And when we take that split in January, that would mean that they've fixed their run defense and that the run defense has helped the pass defense. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's go to the 49ers defensive line. Here you go. There's an inverted productivity here along the defensive line. So just to explain this, blue is good, red is bad. The top of this graph are defensive ends. Under the dividing line, you've got defensive tackles. Both are graded against their position group, against qualifiers at their position group. So as you can see, there's a mixed bag here, but there's a whole heck of a lot of red, more than you'd expect from the 49ers defensive line. The inversion that I'm talking about is down here with the defensive tackles. So I'm just going to zoom in on their position group specifically. So you see the defensive tackles from Hargrave to Armstead, to Kinlaw, to Givens. Last year, 49ers defensive tackles didn't have any good pass rushing scores, which is this column that my cursor's hovering over. There was a lot of red in pass rushing. They only had 3 combined sacks all season from their defensive tackles. This year, the 49ers already have 6.5 sacks from these guys. So adding Javon Hargrave has obviously given the defensive tackles a boost in pass rushing. A healthy Eric Armstead has given the 49ers a boost. Hell, even Javon Kinlaw is pass rushing at an above average level this year. So is Kevin Givens. So the interior pass rush problem has been solved. But with that, we've seen an inversion in run defense as well. Eric Armstead had been a phenomenal run defender in years prior when the 49ers had a top 2 run defense in 2021 and 2022. He has a below average run defense grade right now. Javon Kinlaw, everybody said, well, maybe he could be a good run defender and he'll always be a poor pass rusher. It's been the opposite. It's been a solid pass rusher, but the run defense has had a poor grade for the 49ers, washed out of way too many plays. Javon Hargrave, he's the best pass rusher. We expected good pass rushing numbers. I think his ESPN pass rush win rate is even higher. It's number 2 or number 3. Productivity, opponents, quick game, and the poor run defense from the 49ers has not allowed him to record better than number 11 productivity. That's still good, but not the run defense at 50.2. Same thing with Kevin Givens. Solid pass rush score, poor run defense score. So the 49ers do not like this inversion. Looking at the edge rushers here at the top, from Bosa to Farrell to Randy Gregory to Drake Jackson to Kerry Hyder, Bosa's been good both ways. He's still been great. I mean, to have a top 10 grade in pass rush ranking, that's pass rush productivity, despite the challenges the rest of the 49ers defense is facing. And then to have a top 5 run defense grade, that shows that Bosa is a complete player. So you have to watch the tape. You have to watch a little bit closer than a lot of the hot takes about Nick Bosa. The problem has been outside of Bosa on the 49ers defensive end position. And that's how Chase Young might be able to help the 49ers. Cleveland Farrell, they brought him in because Sansom Ebukam set some good edges against the run for the 49ers last year. But Ebukam's in Indianapolis now. Farrell does not have a good track record of rushing the passer throughout the first few years of his NFL career with the Raiders. But he's been better against the run. He hasn't been good against the run this year, though. It's a bad grade against the run for Farrell. They traded for Randy Gregory, who's been a good pass rusher, but he's lighter. So his specialty isn't run defense. He's actually been the best outside of Bosa in the entire 49ers defensive line room against the run. So Randy Gregory's been really good, but as you can tell, the run defense grade just barely below average. It's nothing to write home about. Drake Jackson has struggled to rush the passer, and he's been really bad against the run. I've talked about him getting pancaked by TJ Hawkinson against Minnesota. So that's been a liability for the 49ers. And Kerry Hyder, who had the worst metrics out of all these guys, they cut him when it came time to trade for and fit Randy Gregory on the roster. So a lot of red, a little bit of blue, but more red in the entire defensive line room. And the 49ers want to fix this. Well, Chase Young, how would he help? Well, he's going to slot in for a Drake Jackson and a Randy Gregory. Randy Gregory will still play, so it's probably going to knock Drake Jackson out of the rotation. More developmental work for Drake Jackson at practice. But Chase Young is a top 6 pass rusher in pass rush rank, so ranked higher than Bosa, who's at number 9. And he's been a top 5 run defense guy in the past before his injury. He's at about number 28 in run defense now, scoring in the 70s. So immediately you have the 49ers' new acquisition, Chase Young, outperforming everybody but Bosa on this list. So that's how it works at defensive line. That's my evaluation of the defensive line. If you, again, make sure that you're taking a look at this on The Athletic and you're subscribing. I think this is the most detailed 49ers stuff anywhere. I'm explaining what's wrong with the 49ers defense. Right now, I'm zooming in. Then I'm going to zoom back out to close this show. But now we have to get to the back 7. Take a look at the 49ers back 7 splits. Same kind of format, different stats for the back 7. I've got total snaps. I've got passer rating allowed. That's going to include interceptions, which lower it in a good way, and touchdown passes given up, which raise the passer rating allowed. And then yards per cover snap. This one right here, that's an efficiency stat that I think is telling of how a player is in coverage. because it's going to factor into times that a player is not targeted. And for cornerbacks, we know that's really important. Richard Sherman used to scare the crap out of people, and they wouldn't throw in his direction. So his yards per cover snap number was very low. You can't just do yards when targeted as a cornerback. You've got to do yards every single time a corner or a linebacker or a safety is in pass defense, because that's going to help you understand how afraid teams are to throw his way. And if they're afraid, well, that's going to help the cornerback's efficiency. Finally, we have missed tackle rate on the right. Again, blue is good, red is bad. And I divided this into the positions. So linebacker, top third, cornerbacks in the middle, safeties on the bottom. They're all graded and shaded against their respective position groups. We can start with the linebackers. I think that Dre Greenlaw's missed tackle rate, this is the highest of his career. I don't think he's fully healthy. I think the 49ers have essentially acknowledged that. He's missed a lot of practice this year. He's been dealing with a couple different issues, a hamstring, I think most recently something with his arm. He got steamrolled by Joe Mixon against Cincinnati. That wasn't good for the 49ers. I think when Kyle Shanahan talks about this defense being tired, needing this bye week, Dre Greenlaw is probably at the top of the list. Also hasn't been as great in coverage, although you can argue that they haven't been going his way a lot, and maybe that's why his passer rating allowed is worse, because he hasn't had a shot to generate that takeaway, that ever elusive takeaway yet. Fred Warner, of course, has a pick, but Dre Greenlaw doesn't have a pick, so the passer rating he's allowed is 105.8. Oren Burks has been a hell of a third linebacker for the 49ers this year. Lowest missed tackle rate of the trio, lowest in everywhere, right? Except for yards per cover snap, a little bit higher than Dre Greenlaw. But the interception that Burks notched earlier this season has his passer rating allowed down at 60.3. Fred Warner giving up a little too much in coverage so far this year, and that missed tackle number, to me, it seems that Fred has been out of position, and he said so a lot this year. So Fred is the one with the radio in his helmet. If there are concerns with Steve Wilks and the alignments and the communication, that goes through Fred Warner. And Fred Warner's numbers, as you can see here, have not been as good as they have been in the past. The passer rating allowed into his coverage is really good because of the picks, but the other stuff, he's given up too many yards at cover snap. This is above or worse than the Fred Warner standard, and he's been missing too many tackles. He had found a way to get that missed tackle rate under 5% over the last few years. It's now 14.5%. So Warner's got to get back in position. Warner's got to be better this season. You see at the bottom of the screen, I say that Isaiah Oliver, Ambry Thomas problem combo. Well, the most red and the darkest red on this chart is found right here with Oliver and Thomas. Oliver's the slot cornerback. Thomas is an outside cornerback, but you could see that Oliver has been picked on. He's given up the highest passer rating out of any 49ers DB. But you can tell that Ambry Thomas has also gotten picked on, the most yards per cover snap allowed of any 49ers DB. Steve Wilks saw Isaiah Oliver's struggles coming in training camp, which is why he said Diamante Lenore is going to move in the slot when there's smaller, shiftier receivers. Meanwhile, the plan was for Isaiah Oliver to cover the bigger receivers like the tight ends who split out wide. However, due to Ambry, and that would necessitate Ambry Thomas, this guy right here, taking over Lenore's spot when he slid inside. Due to Thomas's poor play, though, and you could see that yards per cover snap allowed, that's extreme. That's not good. 1.62. The 49ers, I don't think, trust Ambry Thomas anymore in this rotation, so they're just playing Isaiah Oliver on a big load of snaps. You can tell 364 snaps already this season on the inside, even against smaller, shiftier guys. And that's led to a high missed tackle rate from Isaiah Oliver. That's not good. It's led to a high rating allowed. That's not good. It's led to a below average amount of yards per cover snap allowed. That is not good. This is why people thought the 49ers would be in the market for a cornerback, because a new corner, somebody like Jalen Johnson, would be able to kick Diamante Lenore inside and put Isaiah Oliver on the bench and remove some of the red on this graph. However, the corners available proved to be too costly, especially Jalen Johnson. The Bears didn't even deal him. No team was able or willing to meet their asking price. The 49ers obviously want to keep their second and their first round picks. They were willing to part with a third for Chase Young, but I don't think they're willing to go any higher than that for a player like Jalen Johnson, who's really good. Somebody like Adoree Jackson, also available, hasn't had a good year, has been bad in coverage this year. So the 49ers, I don't think we're trying to bang down that door either. So the conversation surrounding the problem is around Isaiah Oliver and Ambry Thomas. Those are two guys that the 49ers need. They don't need anything revolutionary from them, and you need one or the other. This coverage unit just has to force opposing quarterbacks to hold on to the football a hitch or two longer. Just one hitch should be enough for this pass rush to hit home. The 49ers currently lead the league in quarterback pressures. And they're not blitzing all that much with Steve Wilks. A little bit more than the past, but all too much. That lead in quarterback pressures is not translated to sacks like it has in years prior because the coverage is not living up to its end of the bargain downhill. Combine that with the fact that the 49ers run defense is also really struggling, and you will understand why this defense can't put it all together. So they need to start with stopping the run. Chase Young can help with that because he's bookending Nick Bosa, who has still been great this season. And then you hope for players like Fred Warner and Isaiah Oliver to continue to find themselves in better position. And you appreciate the fact that there's been an inversion along the defensive line, that your interior linemen are now getting pass pressure but aren't doing as well on the run. That means that teams are going to try to run against the 49ers. Absolutely. Because they haven't been able to stop it yet. Number 26 EPA this year. That's why they got Chase Young. Now it's time to buckle down and figure out what exactly is wrong with this run defense, with the rotations and with the physicality needed at the edges. I think that one of the things I nailed, I think that edge opposite Nick Bosa has been problematic, and the 49ers hope that they have fixed it with their newest acquisition, Chase Young. That's how he can help. So here you have it. If you're enjoying this breakdown, go ahead and read all of it. It is in the description. So go ahead and input your information there, or go to the description. Then you can click on the link and you can input your information there and sign up for the Athletic. We'll answer a few questions here. 49ers Q&A about the 49ers defensive evaluation. Johnny thinks that it is the play calling. D'Amico Ryans, little slip there. Steve Wilks has acknowledged that. Steve Wilks has acknowledged that the play calling on the back end of the coverages have not been up to par. He needs to be a little bit better just to give that defensive line a shot. That being said, the run defense also gives the offense a much better platform when it's ranked number 26 versus 1 or 2, where the 49ers run defense was the past couple of years. And for that, I talk about the Ebucom loss and I talk about the acquisition of Chase Young. Who cares who the 49ers pick with their first pick right now? We need to focus on this 2023 season, then pick up the pieces and look at the draft after that. Neil wishes the 49ers would have gotten Jalen Johnson, but he was too expensive. I think the Bears probably even wanted a first-round pick there, and this is a guy that's playing his first elite season right now, and obviously the 49ers weren't crossing that threshold. Would have been nice to have been able to keep Emmanuel Mosley. Yes, but E-Man also tore his second ACL. Oh, awesome, John. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. John has a great show. I like interacting with John online. And he, John also, I think he just moved to the Bay Area, so I got to meet up with him at some point. But thanks, John. John does a great job with these meetups, these fan meetups. I always see this stuff on social media. Everybody like takes over this bar, and it's cool. So check out John Chapman. He's on social media. I think it's the 49ers Rush. Yeah, there it is. It's on his little logo, the 49ers Rush podcast. So thank you, John. Hope you're doing well. Hope you and your wife are doing well. I met both of them down in LA a couple of years ago at one of those fan meetups. So John does a great job. See, everybody knows John. It's great. For lunch, I had some Mexican food. I'm out here in Nashville right now. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you guys a little breakdown of Nashville food. Maybe go to some place in Franklin. Actually, I'm going to go to lunch in Nashville. So I'll get some barbecue here, which will be great. But I'll get some breakfast. Maybe do a coffee shop. Maybe do a walkthrough of downtown Franklin. Should be a lot of fun. Appreciate you, legendary thunderous one. Any questions? Let's get after it. I know that not as many people are Interested now and stuff as when Chase Young signed a few days ago. It's going to be a little bit of a lull here, but I'll keep it going with the content. John Lynch is a very aggressive general manager, that's for sure. But he's also, I mean, Christian McCaffrey was a move that required a lot of assets. But when you look at Chase Young and Randy Gregory, those are two moves that, people say big swings. I don't think they were really big swings. I think they were just smart moves, good business decisions, because they essentially got both of those players for free. The draft capital cost to acquire Randy Gregory was negligible, and it was a third round comp pick for Chase Young that they can recoup in case Chase Young signs somewhere else. And even if he signs with the 49ers, oh, you got Chase. That means he's played really well, right? That means that you got Chase Young for a third round comp pick. Nothing, right? Randy Gregory also cheap this season as far as his contract goes because the Broncos are paying it. Chase Young, $561,000. It's a rookie deal, prorated salary. So, yeah, these are good moves that the 49ers have made because there's literally next to no downside on these moves. Steve Wilkes has been playing zone more, but he's been playing more man than the 49ers usually have. That's what Richard Sherman took exception with. He thinks they should be playing more zone on first and second down. I think Richard's right. He wants the 49ers just go back to the old school Seattle style cover three, which has failed in most places where it's been tried, but it's worked with elite talent, right? It's worked for the Legion of Boom in Seattle, and it worked for the 49ers in 2019. So you need to have the horses to be able to run this defense, which is press man coverage on the outside, but zone coverage, right? In the cover three, because the pass rush needs to get home. The pass rush doesn't get home, you're going to get carved up on short passes. So you need to have a good enough pass rush to get home to that quarterback in time so that his short throws are at the very least inefficient. So they go into the kill zone and there's no yards after the catch. You also have to trust your corners to be able to disrupt those outside receivers at the line of scrimmage enough so that there's no chance for them to make plays behind the corners downfield. So the pass rush hits before then. The reason that so many teams have failed with this defensive scheme is because they don't have the horses the Legion of Boom did or the 2019 49ers Gold Rush did. But I think the 49ers, especially now with Chase Young as part of the mix, have that talent. They have the talent to be able to run a simplified scheme, something the rest of the NFL is straying away from, but Richard Sherman has encouraged the 49ers to go back to it. Mike has a good question. Can Samuel Womack fix the nickel spot? I think if Samuel Womack does play extensively for the 49ers this year, when he does come off of the injured reserve list, I think he might be a better candidate at outside corner to kick Diamondor Lenore inside. And then the question is, will Diamondor Lenore fix the nickel spot? I think the Hyena, it's a good guy to have in there at nickel. I think he has got way more change of direction than Isaiah Oliver. The issue with Isaiah Oliver is he's too big, right? The 49ers were planning to run a mix and match with Oliver and Diamondor Lenore on the inside. Oliver to cover guys like Darren Waller, the bigger targets, like the tight ends that line up in the slot, and Diamondor Lenore to handle the shiftier targets. But because Ambry Thomas, I always so embarrassing when that happens. But we got Mike's thing back up on the screen. So anyway, let me get this up on the screen though and resume my thought. Boom. Okay, so Mike asks, will Womack fix the nickel spot? I think that Womack coming into the game, if that's what the 49ers do, would push Diamondor Lenore inside. I think that Womack might be somebody the 49ers actually envision on the outside and not a nickel. Well, I think he could play both because he's 5'9", he's got long arms, and he's got good change of direction. But I tend to think that Diamondor Lenore might be the 49ers' preferred option on the inside. Anyway, they wanted Oliver initially against the bigger guys. He did a good job against Darren Waller in week 3. And they wanted Diamondor Lenore against the shiftier guys. But here's the issue. Because Ambry Thomas has struggled for the 49ers. He's right here. They can't run this. They don't trust Ambry Thomas, so they have to keep Isaiah Oliver in the game. They don't have that. Maybe Samuel Womack becomes that, but right now they don't have that corner available to come into the game and allow Diamaro Lenore to move inside. So that's where the 49ers are at right now. We'll see if that can change moving forward. But I will say that in the case of Isaiah Oliver, it hadn't all been bad. He covered Waller well, but then the following week against the Dallas Cowboys, or 2 weeks from them because they played the Arizona Cardinals first, but 2 weeks after that against the Dallas Cowboys, we saw Isaiah Oliver struggle on the touchdown to Kevontae Turpin, the smallest player in the league. He's 152 pounds. And he just kind of got lost. And Oliver's a big slot corner, right? He's 6'1". Some of these smaller guys in the NFL, they're shiftier than he is. And that is the 49ers' issue. So I think they need to develop better change of direction at nickel, because there are situations where you're going to have to man up in that spot. It's not going to all be zone, especially in this scheme. You know, that nickel spot sometimes is the one you need the most man coverage from. So I think they need a shiftier presence there. And that's something that Steve Wilks has thought about and has been concerned about ever since training camp. And he just hasn't been able to use the positional versatility that he thought he has because of Ambry Thomas not being good enough on the outside. John predicts that Chase Young is going to wear number 92. I'm not seeing assignment busts necessarily in the secondary. This is an interesting question. I'm seeing guys that are a tick off, right? And I think that a lot of that is because the coverages are a little bit different this year. And I don't think the 49ers are quite playing as confidently and as quickly as they were before. And I think that Steve Wilks is obviously still trying to find his sweet spot as far as calling this defense. And that has not vibed perfectly with the 49ers secondary. So especially against the best quarterbacks they faced, Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrow there in back-to-back weeks, there was Matthew Stafford, who also saw some success against them in week 2. But those quarterbacks, those really accurate, precise guys, have been able to take advantage of the fact that the 49ers have been steps off. They've been close, sure. But if you're only close against guys that are really accurate, you're going to have a rough day at the office. Stafford had a productive game. Cousins had a really good game. And Burrow completed 19 straight passes. So being just close it could be ugly against the best quarterbacks and the best schemes in the National Football League. How are Hufanga and Gibson doing? What's my take on them? Really well. I don't think that the tackling's been quite as good for Hufanga and Gibson this year. Gibson for sure. Hufanga needed to improve his tackling last year, and he did midstream. That's how he became an all-pro. Gibson had the top missed tackle rate, so the best missed tackle rate, the lowest, in the NFL for safeties last season. He was really, really damn good. It's still better than average. The average is like 12% in the league, but he's missed 3 this year. I think he only missed like 1 tackle all last season. But look at the yards per cover snap. They're lower than for safeties than they are for other positions because safeties aren't found in one-on-one coverage as much. But that's a really elite number from Tashaun Gibson, 0.12. Hufanga, a little bit worse, 0.21. Gibson's allowed a passer rating of 4 into his coverage. So I think he's been good. And I don't think that penalty that they called against him when the 49ers played Cleveland was a good call. Chase Young, still have the Bengals stuck in my mind. Chase Young can't wear number 2 like he did at Ohio State because Diamaro Lenore wore that number. So we're going to have to see a different number than number 2. Although he would look fast. Anybody with a single digit, Randy Gregory's got number 5. You look fast out there. Randy Gregory's looked good, by the way, for the 49ers so far. Let's not forget the prior acquisition to Chase Young. Randy Gregory, number 18 in pass rush win rate so far this season, trying to climb his way back into the top 10 where we've actually seen him reside in recent years. But I think that Chase Young is a nice bridge between Bosa and Randy Gregory, a guy who, Chase is big enough, 264 pounds, to set a really firm edge against the run. This is a good question. How much impact does Daniel Bullocks, the DB coach, have on schematics in the secondary? That I'm not sure. That would be actually a really good question moving forward, because I think that Wilkes came here. It was a big time crash course for him. The 49ers wanted him to learn their way of doing things and then sprinkle in his way of doing things. Right now, we've seen a lot of his way of doing things and how it's changed with more of that man coverage, slightly higher blitz rate. Obviously, the results haven't been great so far for Steve Wilkes. So maybe they're going to rein it in, bring it back to the basics. But that's a good question about Daniel Bullocks. All right, everybody, check out the piece. This is the most detailed bye-week analysis you're going to find of the 49ers defense. And I focus on where Chase Young can fit in. And I go through all of the data that you see up on the screen passing through right now. And I explain it all. So I think it's worth a subscription to The Athletic. The link for this is in that description. Everybody, thank you. We will talk to you next time. Great questions today. Talk to you very soon.